Hello, listeners. Thanks for clicking play on today's episode. We're so happy to have you joining us. You're likely taking a break from the hustle and bustle of the holiday season.
And we know that the hustle and bustle can be uplifting, exciting, and joyful.
Right.
But it can also feel overwhelming or lonely to some.
For sure. It's a season of navigating big emotions.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we talked about on the podcast this time last year.
Right.
Because the children we serve at CASA are navigating big emotions during the holidays, just like the rest of us. Mm-hmm. And we could all use a reminder on how to best help children navigate those emotions.
And I think navigate the holiday season in general.
Yeah.
Because when we know about the challenges facing children and families, we can help ensure that no child faces additional abuse, neglect, or trauma.
Yes. And so we are going to replay our December 2023 list of do's and don'ts for the holiday season. So keep listening and enjoy.
Hello, listeners. This is Janine
and Kristen
from Henrico Casa. You are listening to our podcast, Vigilant Voices.
Living life every day.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Vigilant Voices podcast.
This episode comes to you right in the middle of the holiday season. So we hope that this is a time of cheer for you.
Yes, but we also understand if it's not.
Right.
Because while the holidays can be joyful, they can also be a time of stress, of grief, of loneliness, unmet expectations, and other maybe not so cheerful feelings.
Right. So we're going to talk about this, but whether the holidays are a happy or a challenging time for you, we know that they are often full of big emotions,
yes,
right?
Good on that.
And that really is especially true for the children we serve at Henrico Casa, which stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. And so once again, today, as a reminder, we are focusing on knowing about the challenges facing children and families in order to ensure that no child faces additional abuse, neglect, or trauma.
That is absolutely right. And as much as we hate to think about it, abuse, neglect, and trauma do happen during the holiday season.
Unfortunately, that's very much true. And so I think perhaps, Kristen, we can talk about a couple of things. And so I have a couple questions in mind. Well, yeah, I think there are two. So maybe why are the holidays difficult for so many of the youth that we serve? And then maybe part two of that is, and then what can we do to best support them through the holiday season?
Sure. And they're both great questions. And like anything, it totally depends on the child, the family, and their situation. But before we go into that, Janine, I do have a case story to share.
Oh, good.
It was actually conveyed to us by one of the judges with Henrico County's Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court. This judge was explaining the role of court-appointed special advocates to a group of our volunteers.
Right.
And she was explaining that the observations, the reports, the recommendations that we provide to judges like her are so important. And so in doing so, she recounted a family that still weighed heavily on her heart because they came before her in the courtroom on a motion regarding the children being removed from their home of origin. And they came to her courtroom just a few days before Christmas.
That's sad and a tough situation for many reasons.
Yeah, and clearly the timing and the contrast of this situation versus, what you hope would be holiday cheer was just so upsetting to this judge. She knew that the children had already lived through traumatic experiences, and the decision that she felt was in their best interest to be separated from their birth parents for their own safety would likely also add to their trauma.
Yeah, and I feel for our judges who are amazing, but they are tasked with making very difficult decisions.
Yeah, they are.
And they're not easy. And, the reality in this situation was that I think she knew that this decision that she was going to make would clearly impact how the children feel about probably holidays to come in the future.
Right. Yeah, we see a lot of reasons why this time of year can be emotionally challenging. For some, like these children, the holidays specifically bring back a traumatic memory, right? This is the time of year, though, when maybe so-and-so drinks more heavily and becomes abusive.
Right.
Or this is the time of year that our family always visits Uncle so-and-so who makes me feel uncomfortable.
Right. And then there are additional feelings for children who have been removed from their homes, like the children that we serve living in foster care.
Right.
And the holidays can initiate and bring up maybe even a sense of mourning because
Yeah, so true.
they're missing things, right?
Mhm.
Family, friends, the house that they knew, the traditions that, they used to celebrate.
Yeah, for sure. I saw that this informal study conducted with the Foster Club found that 82% of youth living in foster care miss their families during the holidays.
Wow.
Which
Yeah.
makes sense.
It does.
And a lot of these kids probably know that maybe they're safer, but they
Mhm.
still miss their families.
Yeah.
Children like these, they have lost relationships, lost traditions, and now they're navigating new, unfamiliar relationships, new homes, new traditions that may be completely different than what they were used to. It's a major loss
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah. And so we're talking about children because that is our primary focus in terms of who
Right.
we serve. But I think we should also point out that, adults mourn these things too.
They do.
And, we talk about this, magic age of 18 when a youth turns 18. It doesn't mean that they're going to magically love the holidays again.
Mhm.
Right. And so we probably all know individuals who feel sadness and grief for many years to come around the holidays. And it might lessen over time, but it probably never fully goes away depending on what those memories, evoke and what those feelings, right?
That's so true. During the holiday season, it can seem like everybody else is
Mhm.
happy and cheerful and surrounded by family. And so if that's not how you're feeling, right, you can see how it really intensifies feelings of loss and can lead to stronger feelings of loneliness or isolation.
Right. And, those emotions and maybe expectations of what, you hope, they just seem bigger during the holidays, right? And then there's more opportunity then for those sort of big sways in terms of how then we might feel let down based on, our expectations.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be the case. And just practically, during the holidays, our schedules and routines are off, right? So we all know that most children and teens do better when they're on a routine. And so, having parties at school or being off on break gets us out of that routine.
Right.
And, that can lead to big swings in emotions too. One example that comes to my mind is when there's no nap schedule all of a sudden.
Right. And I mean, I think, we all like a holiday party, right?
Sure.
But then there's too much caffeine or there's too many sweets and treats and cookies, or just the stress of being cooped up, with relatives and just some of those family dynamics.
Right. It sometimes feels like it's all just a meltdown waiting to happen for the kids and for the adults sometimes.
That is true. We all have probably had spirited family discussions around the table. But, I think as we often say, if you know better, then you do better. So I think then, okay, how can we better support the kids and families through the holidays that, we're working with and maybe struggling?
Yeah. And I think a good way to maybe do this is to brainstorm a list of holiday do's and don'ts together.
Okay, let's do that.
And so I would start off saying, do prepare for the holidays. If you have a child in your life who you anticipate could have a reason to struggle, be prepared. Ask them how they're feeling about things. Ask them if there's anything they specifically want or need. And set your own expectations. Like, I know that me as an adoptive mom, I have to check myself going into the holidays. There's this picture of what I want the holidays to be for everyone in my family. And then there's the reality of how it can go some
like how it
years.
might actually go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've learned, and my husband helps me remember, to maintain appropriate or maybe more realistic expectations for our kids.
I can see that. And that's a good reminder. And, ignoring the potential difficulty is just never going to help anyone. Right. And so maybe part of this is preparing others.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So giving extended family a little heads up or a little pep talk on what to be aware of, how, you think a child may react or what to do if they do.
Sure. And we're talking like the holidays are just starting now because it's that season, but being reminded of tough things can happen really anytime. Like when you're walking through the store in July and Thanksgiving decorations pop up, right?
Is a huge pet peeve of mine, and
Me
time
too.
flies too fast. And I feel like we rush it and can't enjoy the moment when we're thinking about Christmas in July.
I totally
or the
agree.
holidays. Yes.
But, visuals like that can make the big thoughts and feelings and emotions brew in advance of the actual holidays, right? We can't predict what might trigger an emotional response from someone who's experienced trauma like this.
Right. And I think then as a piggyback to the suggestion of being prepared, I think we should add that we should also respect the child's feelings. So that would be another do
Right.
respect. If they don't want to participate in something, that's okay.
Yep.
We need to respect that. If they don't feel comfortable being hugged, let's say by relatives, that's okay.
Yep.
Respect that. If they need a break from all the festivities to go in their room or just kind of escape for a little bit, that's okay. We should
Yeah.
respect that.
Yep. No matter how wonderful your holiday vision may be, you can't force them to see it, feel it, enjoy it. So definitely respect their space and feelings.
Right. And then, while respecting them, I think the key is that we really do not want to make them feel uncomfortable, though, or unwelcome.
Yeah, and unwittingly so, right? Listeners, we know that you don't intend to make someone feel unwelcome.
Right. It can be completely unintended.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think I've seen people get caught up in these holiday traditions and then kind of forget how it might feel for someone who's like on the outside.
Sure.
Let's see, what's a fun example? Okay, maybe, that historically in the family, everyone has always worn like matching PJs, right?
Yeah.
On their holiday, morning. But what about the new foster child who has now come into the home and then they don't have a pair of
Yeah.
pajamas?
And even if you get them a cute pair to kind of match, they're still different than the original everyone else had,
Correct,
right? Yeah. Yeah, another thing that comes to mind is how we decorate. We tend to have family pictures around, holiday cards hanging on the fridge, but is this foster child's photo anywhere?
Yeah, well, and kids notice those things. I mean, that
Definitely.
is the reality. They already feel out of place. They're in a different environment
Mhm.
and they're trying to assimilate the best they can.
Yep.
And so then they're looking for proof of why they don't belong.
Yeah.
And completely unintended, they don't see themselves anywhere.
Exactly. And so to make them feel included and to honor their history, which is different than yours, a do that I would put out there is to incorporate their traditions and maybe even their wider family into your holiday plans. Could you have their relatives maybe send them cards? Could you cook one of their favorite holiday meals? Could you attend an event with them at their old school? Could you have them teach you the words to their favorite holiday song?
Right. Like that's, very much could be even, culturally,
Yes,
right? Or just
yes.
those traditions. And sometimes it's not safe, we should say,
That's
or
true.
healthy to reconnect with relatives or past places. And that should certainly be something to talk, with some professionals about as to
Right.
what would be best for that child. But if that's the case, then I think a great suggestion is to do something new.
Yeah, great
Right?
idea.
Like start a new tradition that's just new to everyone in the family. And so I think that way then no one feels left out because, hey, we're going to go do something different this year and fun.
Yeah. And hopefully you're bonding through that, right?
And then create something that, if it's really fun, that can continue and that becomes a new tradition,
Yeah.
going forward.
I love that. Love
Yeah.
that.
So I think, we've talked about some great ideas here. And so if we were to distill this
Recap.
down, yes. So our major don't was, don't make someone feel uncomfortable,
Unwittingly so.
unwittingly
Yeah.
so, right? So that would be something that let's not do that. But what we should do is we should prepare and set expectations.
Yep.
We should respect a child's feelings and their boundaries.
Definitely.
We should incorporate the child's traditions.
Yeah, as much as possible.
And then we should add something new to holiday plans.
Yeah.
What do we think?
I think they are all fabulous. Definitely love all the do's. And, it's really about stepping back to remember that it's pretty difficult to believe in the magic of the season if you're a child who's lived through abuse or neglect.
Right. And that sort of brings us back, Kristen, to the children in the case story that you shared.
Yeah. Yeah. That holiday clearly did not go as expected for them.
Right.
And the judge did not weigh her decision lightly, but she knew that their safety was the foremost priority. And so she made decisions to ensure that those children were safe through that holiday season. And, I think that weighs on her and she still thinks about it, but it was the choice that had to be made, that had to be enough in that moment.
Right. And then, moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
they're in that safe environment
Yeah.
and hopefully it's temporary and they can be reunited with, their family of origin. But in those moments, then moving forward, we're helping them heal, helping them find hope.
Yeah, because more than anything, this is a season of hope.
And so, listener, we hope that you find joy and hope during this season, even if it is amongst loss, grief, or other heavy emotions.
Yeah, and that is our call to action for you and for the children in your life. Do something that brings you joy.
Reminisce on those good memories, maybe create a new tradition, reconnect with someone who is uplifting to you.
Yes, and be grateful for all of it. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you for listening to Vigilant Voices, Henrico Casa's new podcast. We have a vision for all children to live in safe, healthy homes. You can help us make that happen. Tell a friend about our podcast and find us on social media.
I believe in a better day.